dreadful and allegedly true road trip horror stories that will keep you off the road at night. Be careful out there. There's more than bears in the woods. Serial killers often warn their victims before they strike, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I set out on the Great American Road Trip, Route 66, beginning at its origin at the intersection of Jackson Boulevard and Michigan Avenue in Chicago, with my girlfriend from college. Our plan was to follow the old route across America and explore all the famous sites along the route. We were going to travel on a tight budget, so a couple of cheap motels, interesting we hoped, and sleeping in the car at Walmart, rest areas, campsites, or wherever else we could find that was free. I had a 2007 Honda Pilot, a good reliable car, even with the high miles on it. It was big enough with the back seats out to sleep comfortably on an air mattress for 2 people. We rigged up a makeshift curtain for privacy and to keep any light out at night. It took less than 10 minutes to set up our den for the night. We always felt safe until that last night. We had been ambling through Illinois, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, and New Mexico, and were now in Arizona. We didn't have a set plan or timetable. It was just whatever caught our interest and attention, and of course, the must-see landmarks we visited. We didn't drive more than a few hours a day, as we explored all the famous stops on and off the route. We asked waitresses and whomever we met along the way where the best place was to camp at night, and we made some great friends. We did line dancing at a cowboy saloon, kicked up our feet at a hole in the wall, and drank beer with old-timers listening to the music of drifting musicians at a country bar. We got caught in a thunderstorm on a trail hike and ended up hanging out with a family in their RV, where they fed us like traveling royalty. Every encounter with a stranger we left with a friend. As we got into Flagstaff, we veered off the route to go to the National Monuments. The National Monuments comprise 40,000 acres of high desert, canyons, mountains, mesas, and volcanic features, with more than 3,000 archaeological sites of Native American culture. For the night, we found a free campsite on Hip Camp. We followed the GPS and drove up into the woods. It was a little from town, but it was free, so all is good. As we arrived at the location, there was already an RV and 2 campers further up in the trees. We parked next to the RV where a man was sitting on a folding chair. We gave a wave trying to be friendly, and were greeted with a blank expression and no response. Staring at us, he got up and went inside, where he stood in the door, still staring at us. Not feeling welcome, we moved our car further down the road to a flat spot under a nice tree. There was a stream nearby, so we went down to see if there were any fish and walked in the water to cool off. Refreshed, we decided to be friendly. Everyone we've met so far on our road trip has been wonderful. There was a campfire with 2 men we saw, so we meandered over saying hello. They offered a chair, so we sat and began a conversation. It turned out the 2 men didn't know each other. They were traveling separately. The one guy seemed okay, but the old man was a bit off. The older dude seemed like he was on some kind of drug. He would move like an airplane or flap his arms like a bird, and was talking about aliens and UFO stuff. The younger guy said he's harmless. We were shooting the breeze with the younger man who said he had been a park ranger, but quit that job recently. He was nice looking and easygoing. We chatted for several hours before he started telling us about a bear he had seen earlier in the day. He showed us pictures he took on his camera. It agitated my girlfriend. Bears and wild animals make her hyper and a little freaked out. The ranger dude didn't help. He elaborated that it wasn't uncommon to see a bear at night if you get up to go to the toilet. He laughed, then his composure changed, and his voice went cold, and he said if you walk about at night, it isn't the bear you have to worry about. I made a joke about serial killers in the woods and Friday the 13th. Coincidentally, it was Friday the 13th, so my girlfriend and I laughed. We were waiting for the ranger to at least smile, but he was stone cold. We changed the subject, but within minutes the ranger was back talking about something that would grab us in the dark. All the while, Spaceman was just staring into the night sky talking to himself. Ranger dude got up and headed into the woods, we thought to relieve himself. It was dead black by now with just a little starlight, so I couldn't see beyond the firelight. But in the shadow I could see the red dot of a camera, and then I saw the light of a digital screen as he took a picture of us sitting around the fire. Not that it is uncommon for people to take pictures, it just struck me strange. He made some adjustments and took 3 more photos. Without any explanation, he returned to the campfire. We were a little unnerved by this and made up a reason to get back to our car to set up for the night. Out of the blue, Spaceman smiles and says have a good night through his glassy eyes. Ranger says without a smile, be alert for bears. We got back in the Honda and look at each other. Why did he take those photos of us? My girlfriend, totally freaked, says, you know, serial killers take pictures of their intended victims. She looked me in the eyes with dread. Do you think he took pre-kill photos of us? I hit the electric locks as we both realized our situation. I threw the car into gear and backed out of our campsite, and there, walking up to our campsite, was wannabe Ranger in our headlights. He was walking towards us with cold malice in his eyes, on an otherwise expressionless face. I floored the Honda, and we escaped certain death that night. COVID-19 had kept us home for 2 summers, and on the 3rd we were ready to get out of the house and go somewhere. Mask requirements were already lifted in several states, and travel had become more accessible. My wife and I decided to take the kids and see her home, about 5 hours from us. The kids were arguing in the back after 2 hours. I was anxious to get there when I saw a construction ahead sign, so I gave the car some gas to speed by some slower cars to squeeze ahead of them, before the construction lane. My wife gave me a that was rude look. I said, look, that F-150 did the same thing and cut in behind us. 12 miles later, the truck was still behind us, which was strange, since there had been many opportunities to pass us. 30 miles further, I took a service exit to get gas and saw the truck continue down the highway. I was relieved as I was getting a little paranoid. The kids were asleep when we stopped, so my wife stayed in the car, and I set the gas pump and went inside to grab a coffee. I returned to the car with our coffee and saw a black F-150 behind our vehicle at the pump. I was sure it was the same F-150 that had been following us so closely for so many miles. The driver was standing next to my wife's passenger window and talking. I walked to the driver's door with the coffee and smiled at the man over the car's roof. Hi there, my name's Eddie, and I was just speaking with your wife. Says y'all are on a road trip. Yeah, we're making a family trip. You've been behind us for a while, so what about you? Eddie laughed. I didn't mean to follow you, but that's what happens when you decide to cut in front of everyone. I couldn't wait to get away from him fast enough. Another hour down the highway, my wife was on her Facebook with an austere look. I asked what was wrong. You know that man at the gas station? He just sent me a friend request. Well, delete that one. Oh, my dear, he was harmless enough. I'm sure he isn't a serial killer, just relax. I checked my rearview mirror to see if he was still behind us. I didn't see him. My wife deleted the request. The kids were awake, so we decided to stop at a diner for a quick bite. We had just ordered, and as I returned my menu to the waitress, I saw Mr. F-150 walk into the diner. After our food was served, I felt he was watching us. My wife said I was just being paranoid and to relax, but I couldn't, so I got up and approached the guy and asked, "Are you following us?" He laughed so loud the entire diner heard. He mumbled something and asked if my wife had received his friend request. I looked at him and said, "Mister, I don't know what your problem is, but let it go, please." F-150 stood up and looked me dead in the eye in the most intimidating manner. Before things could worsen, I grabbed the kids and told my wife we must go. In a rush to get ourselves and the kids out, my wife dropped her cell phone without notice. She realized only after we were back on the highway a couple of miles. She used my cell phone to track the location of her cell phone, and shockingly, it was following us down the road. When she looked at my social media, she could see Mr. F-150 had taken many pictures of our car and of her with her phone, and was posting them on her account. She was furious. She called her phone from my phone, and a male voice said, "Missing me?" I checked my rearview mirror and could see he was 3 cars back. I said, "Let's take this exit, confront him, and ask for the phone back." We took the ramp, and the F-150 followed. At the top of the ramp, I stopped the car, and Mr. F-150 stepped out of his truck and approached our car. I was ready to be firm and demand the cell phone back, but as he got alongside the car, he whipped a hammer from behind his back and slammed it into the windshield. He shattered it with 3 blows. I hit the gas, spinning gravel and heading straight into the town, looking for the police station for safety. I gave the police the best description that I could of the man in the pickup. We made it to our destination in a rental car, leaving ours for repair. We were exhausted from our close call with a stalker. The police called and informed us that they had recovered the F-150 only a short way from where we had the last encounter left abandoned. It had been reported stolen 2 days earlier. There was no sign of the man. The dreadful part of this chilling nightmare is that my wife would receive a photograph of our car every few months on her social media. Eddie was still stalking her. Forgetting your child at a rest stop is gut-wrenching. What could be more dreadful? It was July, and I was taking a road trip with my 7-year-old son. We were driving to our summer home in Maine for a month. It's a long drive, and traffic around New York City can get maddening. It was a little worse on this trip because it was too beastly hot, and the air conditioning wasn't functioning. When we left, it was working, but it stopped putting out cold air, so we both were miserable and cranky. After about 5 hours of driving, we approached the Massachusetts state line. We were both tired and hungry after sunset, so we pulled off the highway at a favorite diner. It's a great place, and we've stopped on previous drives. I hoped it would relieve the stress and tension of the last several hours. Just getting into the air conditioning would be a great relief. The constant complaining from the back seat had worn me down to a frazzle. No cars were in the parking lot out front, other than a blue pickup. The diner was mostly empty, which was unusual, but no wait for seating was welcomed. We rested and ate, and I paid the check. My son bounced off to the restroom, and I went out to the car and pulled up front to wait for him, selecting music on the radio that I thought he would like, and cranked it up. A few minutes later, the back door opened and closed as I put the GPS heading into the Garmin Drive Smart. All right, let's see if we can make the main state line before we have to stop again. I observed the blue pickup truck was leaving right behind us. As I pulled onto the interstate entry ramp, he was tailgating me so close and flashing his lights. I thought he was a very rude and aggressive driver, so on entering the interstate, hit the gas. But the driver did the same, sitting on my bumper and flashing his high beams. At this point, it was wiser to slow and pull into the right lane and let him pass. He did the same, following just as closely. I slowed and the blue pickup swerved left and pulled up next to me. His passenger window was down as he matched my speed and drew close to the side of my car. I was fearful that perhaps he was going to shoot me or something. At my first glance at him, he looked disheveled and frantic. Then I saw he was pointing at my car and shouting something. We were still traveling too fast for me to understand anything he said. I said aloud to my son, "Keep calm and stay low. I don't know what this guy is about." I brought the car to a stop in the emergency lane and kept the car in drive, just in case I needed a quick escape. The old-timer in the pickup jumped out of his truck and came running over. My heart was pounding, as I didn't know what to expect. As he approached, I could hear him shouting, "That's not your boy. That wasn't your son who got in the car back at the diner." He was pointing to the back seat, and I gave him a confused and uncomprehending expression. He looked at me and pointed, "It's not your boy." At that moment, the back door opened, and a man with scraggly hair and an old coat climbed out and ran into the woods. In a second, he disappeared into the underbrush. My mind spun, saying thank you and simultaneously terror-stricken. Where's my son? A deep sense of dread filled me, causing a momentary loss of sight. The kind stranger knew my thoughts and said he was back at the diner. I spun the car across the 3 lanes and through the meridian grass, and at full speed headed back to the diner. The old man in the pickup followed me. I was back at the diner in merely minutes, and my son was balancing on the parking curb blocks. He got in his seat asking, "Where did you go?" Perhaps I got lucky that night and didn't turn around when the door shut at the diner. Who knows what dreadful acts that uninvited passenger had in store.